Hey everybody, Tim Adams here again, talking about projection specs and how to read them. A lot of us, when we're dealing with projection systems and specifically upgrading our projection screens, are presented with a lot of terminology that we're not necessarily familiar with that isn't really intuitive. And so we wanted to kind of cover the top three uh, terms that you're going to come across in shopping for a new projection screen and trying to find out what the best material or the screen surface is for your particular situation, because there are a lot of them. Um, and so what we're going to be looking at primarily is screen gain, contrast, and what's called the viewing angle. So with that, I want to welcome Charles Smith, Paul Allen Clifford, and LaJuan Hughes. And kind of our core group, guys. It's our first one of 2015. And before we dive too much into, or dive right into the topic, how was Christmas? How were the holidays, Paul?
Great. Got my daughters a couple of Android tablets, which is a little odd for me because I'm a bit of an iOS Apple guy, but they seem to be enjoying them, so that's good. Um, Great time with family, and a personal success for me. Took a couple of days off the week of Christmas and a couple of days off the week of New Year's. So I consider that a success. I actually only released 2 shows each of those weeks, so we'll call that good.
Excellent, excellent. So, Charles, how were your holidays?
Good. Had family come in from kind of across the country on my wife's side of the family, so stayed pretty busy there. And of course, with my work being on the road, it was nice being home to get caught up on things around the house. So just good catch-up time, both family-wise and task-wise.
Excellent, excellent. LaJuan has just returned, and LaJuan, why don't you give us a rundown of what your holidays were like?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, that was pretty good. I mean, I kind of ran between family's houses, my in-laws and my mom's house, so you know, it was fun, but it was a good holiday. Just running back and forth, delivering the gifts and that kind of stuff with the kids. Or the nieces, excuse me, the nieces and nephews, or the grandnieces and grandnephews, so it was fun. It was a good holiday. No
excellent,
complaints.
fantastic. Well, with that, we're gonna dive right in. My holidays were great. I got to see my family, which I don't always get to do every holiday season, so I'm pretty stoked about that. And so yeah, we're just gonna dive right in. I want to start off with screen materials, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen if I hit the right button. And we're going to, just for the sake of argument, we're just going to look at daylight here. And you'll see over on the left here we've got high resolution screen materials, standard resolution, and perforated, and then you've got rear projection that are flexible and then rigid. So these would be like on a frame, permanently mounted. So as you can see, there are 10 different surface options just in standard resolution alone, and that can be a little overwhelming. You have day matte and high contrast day matte, and if I just roll over each one, I get kind of the important information. So here's a half angle of 45 degrees and a screen gain of 1.3, and then I can do a 16-foot height maximum with it being a seamless fabric cut. So let's talk about gain, because this is really a misnomer, this phrase or this term right here. A lot of people assume that because the term gain is used, it refers to the screen brightening the projected image by a factor or a ratio of whatever this number is, 1.3 to 1 or or something like it makes it 1.3 times brighter, and that's really not the case. It's important to realize that projection screens are passive in that they're not actively brightening the image or darkening the image. It's a passive system, and so when you're looking at this number, you need to realize that gain 1.0 really refers to the brightness of the image, just period. Okay, and that's the brightness of the reflected image. All right. Yes, there are high gain screens. For example, we can go down to here to Silverlight, and you see that's a 2.5 gain. And some people would think, well, higher gain is a brighter image, and that just automatically makes it better. The issue is that gain and your half angle or your viewing angle are directly related. So if I have a 1.0 screen gain, and let me just get to this graphic here. So this is a graph that represents the correlation between gain and viewing angle, and it's very stark, as you can see. So the lower the gain, you can see here, the more uniform or diffused the viewing angle is, which means that if I have a wide but shallow room, and I've got people viewing the screen from more than, say, 70 degrees to the side, I need a uniform image to be reflected back to them. Because what happens is you get into these high gain screens. I've never seen one that's 10.0, so let's just focus on, say, 2. All right? You can see the difference between this red line and this blue line, in that now I'm looking at a 45-degree viewing angle versus this 90-degree viewing angle. So let's go back to this screen, and you notice that the viewing angle on this 2.5 gain screen is 25 degrees, right? If we go to the day map, which is a 1.0, look at the difference. It's a 60-degree viewing angle. And that's just nuts. I'm sorry, but that's just crazy. And so what happens is, let me get off of this and come back to me. What happens is, I have to talk with my hands. When you get off axis, okay, let's say this is a high gain screen. Let me get my fingers right in front of the lens here. Okay, so all of that image information is being sent right back down that axis, that projected axis, all right? So if this 9-volt is my projector, okay, I'm projecting an image straight out at the screen, and then that image is coming straight back at me. And that's why they're able to get those really high gain numbers. And so they get this really bright image. Unfortunately, what happens is, if you go 30 degrees off axis, that image then becomes like half as bright. So practically what that looks like is, there was a test done on a high gain screen, on a daylight screen material that is called high gain or high power. And it's like a 2.5 gain. And what happened was, they had a sheet of white printer paper, and they had this screen, and they put the white printer paper right up against the screen. And what happened was, when they were, measuring it, and visually, the screen appeared white directly on at 0 degrees, head on to the screen, and the paper looked gray. When they went, I think it was 10 degrees off axis, they both appeared white, the screen and the paper. When they went 30 degrees off axis, the screen looked gray and the paper looked white. And so you lose that image quality very, very quickly. And so if you have a long, narrow room and all of your audience is, very stacked, away from the screen, then a high power screen will probably work for you. A high gain screen will probably work very well for you. But if you've got a wider audience, then your viewing angle will always dictate what your gain is going to be. So there are screen materials out there that don't necessarily have as large of a trade-off, but that's where the research comes in, and that's where knowing what you're going to get on kind of the extremes. On the 1.0 means you're going to get a really wide viewing angle versus the really high gain means you're going to have a really narrow viewing angle. So, Paul, I've been yabbering for about 10 minutes here, is what it feels like. Why don't you, I mean, have you seen this? Are you familiar with this in your experience? Help me out here.
Well, probably the best way I can think of to explain this is if you've ever looked at maybe a projection television or one of the first generation LCD displays or something, where when you look straight at it, it looks great. But if you're one of the poor, unfortunate people to get a side seat, then it's almost unviewable. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, is making sure that you have the proper screen so that your pastor who sits off to the side of during praise and worship time doesn't think, oh, why did we spend so much money on this projector only to now I can't see it, where the people that are sitting right in front of it say, well, it looks great. So that's what's going on, is there are sometimes situations where if you choose the wrong screen, where you think, well, this projector isn't quite as bright as I need, but I'll make it up in the screen. But as you say, Tim, you've got a wide room, then you're going to have a bit of a problem. So you've got to keep that in mind. And in situations like Charles has, where you're turning the screen, that also affects it, because no one, well, very few people are looking at it straight on in his room. Everyone is pretty much looking at it at an angle. And if you've got a screen where at an angle is bad, then that's going to be just trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, because a lot of churches will have this setup where if I'm the audience, I'm looking at screens that are, kind of angled away from me. If I'm sitting in the center of the seating area, and so viewing angle is a hugely important factor when you're considering screen material or screen surface. Simply because you need to know not only what the full viewing angle is before you start losing that color, that contrast, that brightness, but you need to be able to figure out what viewing angle is most of the audience viewing it from, because if you get some screen material that's a 45-degree viewing angle, let's say, and you think, oh, this is going to be great because you're calculating that viewing angle based on a screen that is right directly perpendicular to or parallel to the audience, that's really not going to work too well if it's actually going to be off to the side. And then 45 degrees is like where the person in the center of the room is sitting. And so the people on the right side, let's say it's mounted on the right side, the people on the right side, if they don't have another screen on the left to look at to compensate, they probably won't be able to tell what's even on the screen. It's something that you really have to think about. And since we're talking about Charles's situation, Charles, why don't you chime in? Because you certainly have had some experience with your projection screen setup and where you're going to take that.
Yeah, so viewing angle is definitely important when picking the material type. But as far as all these technical specs and stuff, I'll admit I'm on this one this time as a learner instead of more of a contributor. to kind of look to see what to do with our situation. But I mean, ideally, we would love to put the projector screen in the center, but the fact that we have low ceilings kind of keeps that from happening. We originally had it in the center of the sanctuary, but of course it was right in front of the pulpit. So, you can't exactly have a pastor like our current pastor that likes to wander left to right across the stage if there's a projector screen that he goes hiding behind periodically. So that's why our projector screen's to the side at an angle. But, ideally, if we had one of two things, we'd have kind of the best setup. Either we would have a higher ceiling where we could put the projector screen up above the pastor, or we would have, a large enough church that putting a projector screen on each side of the platform would be appropriate, so that it's more of a direct viewing angle for the people in the congregation. But due to our current church size, there's not a whole lot we can do unless we move to another building. I mean, we've considered taking the projector screen out and going to TVs, but that's a whole other conversation that's probably not appropriate for this hangout. So sometimes definitely your physical aspects of your sanctuary can be a challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Let me unwhitebox you there. There we go. Because you got to be realistic about about the physical limitation, the architectural limitations of your space. And you bring up an excellent point in that if you've got low ceilings, right, and let's say, because I know that you have fluorescent lights for overheads for audience lighting. Ambient light does greatly affect, or can greatly affect, your projected image. And a lot of people don't realize that there can be a trade-off. So if you have really bright ambient light, let's say you have a long rectangular auditorium, sanctuary, meeting room, whatever it is, but you've got windows, and you live in Texas, or let's go one better. Let's go New Mexico, all right, or Denver. Denver, I've heard, has the highest number of sunny days per capita of anywhere in the country, which is crazy to me that it would beat out places like Florida or Hawaii, but it's just what I've heard. So, don't kill the messenger. I could be wrong, but that's just what I've heard. So, but it's really bright. That's the point, right? There's all this ambient light that's coming in from outside that, short of running automated shades or some kind of covering over the windows, short of doing that, how are you going to get a clear and bright enough projected image from a screen? Because you have all of this ambient light coming in and washing out the screen, right? So now we get into a conversation of a trade-off between, okay, we need this high gain as we can get. And the trade-off on that is, of course, the viewing angle. Now, as I stated before, there are ways that you can get around that, but the other option is you go for a more uniform screen, but you really beef up the firepower of your projector, okay? So I generally am a fan of finding a good combination of firepower in the projector matched to an appropriate screen. So for instance, I know from experience that in Charles's situation, I know that a matte white 1.5 screen, let's say, okay, so there's a Video Spectra screen material that Daylight makes, and let me go ahead and pull that up here. So Video Spectra, as you can see, is down here. All right, the half angle is 35 degrees, so it's kind of narrow. All right, so you got to think about that. But I know that in his environment, combined with a 3500 lumen projector, is going to do just fine. It's going to be easily viewable. I wouldn't necessarily say that you could, because it's easily viewable, because I use that terminology, that you could skimp on the firepower. I'd say 3,500 lumens is probably the bare minimum that you want to go. But
yeah, in fact, Tim, the last time I was shopping, I was looking in the 5,000 range.
that's fair. That's fair. You know, there is something to be said about going overboard on the firepower. You know, the last thing you want to do is make it too bright and people are like getting blinded. And usually that has to do with, you know, it's a bad mix of ambient light to screen gain to lumen output of the projector. I would say probably the brightest that you're going to want to go is as bright as you see in a dim movie theater. Any brighter than that, and you're really going to run the risk of just hurting people's eyes, and you really don't want to do that. And sometimes, you know, in the theater it can get too bright as well. You know, and without going into too much detail, you know, they've got a tough job trying to balance all these different visual contrast ratios and visuals that are in movies. So, you know, bear that in mind. But let's take this really bright ambient light church environment that, you know, hypothetical environment that I've created for us, and let's break that down. So, what would that immediately cause? Okay, so that's going to cause a lot of washout on the screen. Okay, and there are screens that deal really well with ambient light from like overhead, but this is going to be coming in from the sides, and so I would be a lot more, or I would be more in favor. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to do like 3 different things here, guys. Of say a 1.0 to a 1.5 gain screen with say a 7 to 10,000 lumen projector at a decent resolution. I would say 1080p would probably be where I would want to aim as far as the sweet spot. But WUXGA certainly is not out of the question. But it's one of those things that it's kind of hit or miss. You know, you really got to be careful about how you're speccing these things, or you know what you're choosing, what you're deciding to do. Let's say that you got a 10,000 lumen projector in this room, or in this space, and you've got, you know, this. Oh, I got to get on the actual screen. There we go. You've got this just regular day mat. Okay, half angle 60 degrees, pretty decent. Screen gain is 1.0. With 10,000 lumens in that space, let's say it's a 500 seat auditorium, I think you're going to do pretty good. You know, I don't see that that's a bad option. I think maybe silver would be better because the half angle, remember, it's deeper than it is wide, and so you can get away with a higher gain, in my opinion. This might actually be the best option. Okay, so you got a 35 degree with a 1.5. That's a good trade-off between this 2.5 25 and this 60 at 1.0. To me, that's a good option. Let me come back to the Hangout here. And what do you guys think? Just nod, shake your head. Do you agree with me? Do you think that would be good or bad? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Okay. Does that all make sense? Yes? Okay. Very good. So now we're going to get into something else. So you notice that over here we're on standard resolution, right? All right. So let's say that we have the same situation, the same room, the same ambient light. I've got a 10,000 lumen projector, but now we have a situation where I'm projecting at 1080p as far as my resolution. Okay, that's the resolution that I'm sending to the projector. Now all of a sudden we get into an issue of clarity, and that's an important difference, or that's an important consideration that we really didn't mention in the beginning, but it is important because if you spent the money on a 10,000 lumen projector, I'm sorry, that's still a chunk of change, even now. And you spent the time, let's say, creating the content at that resolution, then you need to make sure that you're taking that into account so that when you're sending this projected image, the projector is throwing this image out there, that the surface that you're projecting onto is capable of resolving that detail or providing that level of detail back to the audience. And that's why they have this high resolution section. Now, there's only like 4 options here, all right? But each one has kind of its sweet spot. You can see that we're getting a 0.6, 0.9, 1.1, and a 1.3. Now, I recently spec'd this 1.3 in a church, local to me, and the reason I spec'd it was because, one, it was 1.3 gain, which is always good. If you can get really, the highest gain with a good viewing angle, why not, right? But notice, even way down here on 0.6, okay, it's 85, 0.9 is 85, 1.1 is 85. I'm only giving up 10 degrees. And I can tell you that it looks amazing. And in fact, let me pull up an image here, and I'll show you exactly what, well, not what it looks like, but I'll show you the room that it went into. And you can see that it's actually very similar to your room, or to your sanctuary, Charles. So let me pull that up real quick. So as far as resolution, let's just take a quick poll and just unmute yourselves and just chime in whenever it's comfortable. What resolution are you guys projecting at right now, if you know?
720p.
Say that one again.
720p.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's HD. That's pretty good. Lajuan?
I think, I'm not even sure if ours is 720p. Ours is old, but I know it was 2424 or 2600 luminous. So, but it's an old one. It's been in
Sure.
10 years. So, I remember looking at it when I had to replace the motor on the screen, but I can't remember right now. That was a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Charles?
Yeah, I can't really remember either. I know I'm putting out a widescreen resolution because our projector is probably one of those ones that was on the edge. It was like, I want to say it was 800 lumens, and it could put out a widescreen resolution. I just can't remember what it was, and that's what I'm using it as. But of course, since we have a 4x3 screen that's in an odd location, where it's not a true 4x3 image, I'm kind of using the widescreen projection with some cropping to get the image the way I want it. So I'd say we're just probably slightly below 720p as far as a resolution.
Okay. Excellent. Good. Yeah, so resolution's important. I would say if you're at 1024 by 768, I'd say that's probably the high end of normal resolution. Anything above that, so I think the immediate resolution above that would be 720p. It's like, so instead of 1024 by 768, it's what, 1280 by 720? Is that right? Yeah, okay, good. Getting consensus on that.
Yeah, it's something like that. That's why I say we're somewhere in that neighborhood. We might be like 1,000 and something by 600 and something, or that. It was, like I just said, slightly under.
Sure. So this is kind of
I just
important
found
to
ours.
know. Oh, yeah. What do you got?
It's 1024 by 768, and it's 2500 lumens. What we
Okay.
have.
So that's what we call
Yeah.
XGA resolution, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So-
4.3 native aspect ratio.
Yeah, 4:3. So it's
Yeah.
slightly wider than it is tall, which slightly rectangular, but definitely not widescreen. And that's not a bad thing. I don't think an upgrade necessarily needs to. Or it doesn't need to require an upgrade in resolution. If you have good clarity already, but you just want a brighter image, there's no reason to say, well, we're going to go from XGA to 1080p because we can. Well, there's more things to consider than just that. Are there other systems, like a live video system, connected to your projection system somehow? So your full screen slides that are full screen on a 4:3 XGA, 1024 by 768, are now going to be pillar boxed on your 1080p video system. Or, okay, let's go to 1080p, but our video system is only recording 720. That's a scaling issue that has to happen somewhere. And if you don't have the equipment to do that, you could be in for a rather nasty surprise. Like no image from your computer. Or maybe it's squished or squashed or doesn't look right, or take your pick. I'm not saying that it will happen. I'm just saying that Murphy's Law can and usually does show up around upgrade time. So just bear that in mind. So I wanted, oh yeah, I was going to show you this image. So let me do that real quick. All right, so this is a church called Crossway. It's very close. You're seeing the similarities, Charles.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the screen's on kind of the other side of the room. It's on the right instead of the left, but and it's more of a direct viewing angle than ours, but quite similar.
Yeah, what really throws me about this room is the fact that the brickwork is off center. Drives me nuts. I don't know why you would do that, but whatever. They kind of bought this church from another church, so
yeah, I
they
was going
kind
to
of
say
inherited that.
I was going to say it's kind of hard dealing with things considering where that emergency exit door is.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So what you're seeing, that projection screen, they're a former mobile church, and so they needed a solution that was quick to set up and quick to tear down. Obviously, it being directly underneath a recessed can light is not ideal. As you can see, the hot spot on the screen. And can you guys see my mouse at all? If I need like verbal response.
That is a positive on the
Yes.
mouse.
Yeah, I saw
Okay.
it.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's
So
small, but I
what
can
you're
see
seeing
it.
here, this is their projector. This is their projector. Not really an ideal place with a wandering pastor. Very easy to knock that over. So what we discussed was a mounted projector solution, two projectors with screens on the sides over kind of in these areas. And I've yet to go back and get an after picture. Schedule hasn't blended yet. So I wish I had that, because this is gone and the screens are just incredible. And we went with in focus, I want to say 4,000 lumen projectors, just because I was getting a really good price on them. But we went with that. Let's see. Let me present the other screen here. Oh, I got to pull it up. We went with that HD progressive, what was it? 1.3, I think is what we had. There it is. Yeah, so let me pull that up again. There we go. So we went with this guy. And I love the fact that it's a 75-degree viewing angle, which, you know, given the room shape, you know, they're never going to get past 75 degrees, not even close, with this kind of a room layout. And so nobody is going to see a less bright image or a darker image than anybody else. My only concern was that, you know, they did kind of push the screens out a little wider than I would have liked. You know, we talked about putting screens on the wall here, which would have worked as well. You know, either would work, but you know, for me, I like angled screens. They work really well. But you see this low ceiling, right? And that really is the bane of getting a good projected image, of getting good lighting. You know, you can see that they have lighting fixtures here. These are Silicon Acclaim Fresnels, powder-coated white, kind of blend in. And it's a lot of light. They're not very bright, and they're way, way too far back towards the back of the room. And so Crossway doesn't use them because they're pretty much right in your face. And honestly, I can't blame them. So, you know, obviously that was also a consideration with mounting projectors to the ceiling. Because their ceiling is so low, are they going to get blinded? You know, the people that are on the stage, are they going to get blinded by the projection beam? And fortunately, we were able to get them close enough to the screens that, you know, it pretty much goes right over your head, which is awesome. But so we've covered screen gain, and we've covered the relationship between screen gain and viewing angle. Let's talk about contrast. Contrast, just for the uninformed, is the difference, the perceived difference between the brightest bright and the darkest dark. Simple as that. Unfortunately, manufacturers love to, shall we say, cook their numbers. So you'll see these ridiculous contrast ratios of like 50,000 to 1. And it's like, really? That seems like a stretch. Well, you got to remember that they are measuring in rooms that are like pitch black except for their product, be it a projector or a monitor or a TV. So contrast ratio, advertised contrast ratios are very subjective. But where contrast comes into projection screens is just like a projection screen can't actively brighten the image that is being projected onto it, it also does not, to a point, it does not add contrast. Now there are high contrast screen materials that are kind of built for the purpose, but you got to do your research because there's usually a trade-off somewhere else that you want to be aware of so that you're informed. So, you know, if you've got high contrast, is that going to give me less color saturation, for example? You know, how are you achieving this higher contrast than a normal uniform 1.0 gain screen? It's important to ask those questions. It's not that I encourage you to inherently distrust manufacturers. You just need to be informed and to think about, okay, what's different about this product? That's really all it is. So contrast is really a function of the projector. And projectors are not capable of projecting black. So really, when you're seeing a black part of the screen that, or of the image that's being projected, it's really, there's just no light being projected into that area. That's really all it is. So at the very best, you're going to get a really, really dark gray that's being projected from your projector. So knowing that, use that information to inform whether contrast, really high contrast, is that important for you. I would say for the vast majority of churches, it shouldn't be like one of the top considerations. But I wanted to cover it because it is one of the terms that you are going to come across off and on as you're looking over screen specs. So with that, let's open it up for questions. Hopefully you guys have some, because I'm frankly out of material.
Hey Tim, at what point are you seeing an increase in like bright spotting as connected to gain? Because I know that, of course, if you put a mirror up there and you shoot it at it, you're going to see a bright spot. And that's, of course, not what a screen is. So there comes a point where it's not evenly distributed, the light is, and it looks like we got a big old bright spot in the center and everything else kind of trails off from there. And my memory says that the higher the gain. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, you are. So basically, let me get back to this graphic real quick. Let me pull that up and pull that down, pull that up, and I believe it's this one. Yeah. So this graphic, as the screen gain goes up, the likelihood that you're going to get hot spots or images of brightness that are that fade out towards the sides goes up significantly. And a lot of it has to do with, again, viewing angle. Because oftentimes what you'll see is a high gain screen used in a very wide situation or a wide viewing situation. And the idea is that, or the reason for that is because you've got the wrong screen for the wrong application. And we've covered that, but the reason that you get that is because it's not a uniform screen surface. You're going to have areas that are brighter, and the reason for that is because I'm kind of speculating here, so I need to address that. I need to let you guys know that. But I would say it makes sense to me logically that if you're doing a high gain screen, the likelihood of, the purpose is for people to be directly in front of it. That's the long and short of it. And so they're not really that concerned about what it looks like off axis because it's not being used. It's not designed to be used in a wide viewing area. And so because people use it incorrectly, because they're ignorant, they're uninformed, they're uneducated, whatever, they had a really pushy sales guy, whatever it is. For whatever reason, they got the wrong screen for their application, and so they're seeing kind of the black eye, if you will, of the screen. They're seeing things that they're not supposed to be seeing. And it's not that the manufacturer is trying to pull one over on you. It's just they built that screen for a very particular application, and it was never intended to be used in a wide viewing application. For example, there is an organization that I've done some work with in the past that has a rear projection system. And it's a short throw rear projection system, so it's like within 10 feet they're getting, I think, a 9:12 image. So that's huge for that short of a distance. And it's the screen material is a gray, a darker gray, and it's really designed to be looked at from right on, head on. Unfortunately, this system gets used in a wide variety of different applications and environments. The biggest of which is a big, what we call camp meeting, where like 10, 12,000 people filter through this campground attending religious meetings for a week. And these screens are doing image magnification for a tent that's 100 feet wide and probably 350 feet long, which kind of gets ridiculous. I mean, a 9 by 12 foot image is going to do maybe 100 feet if you're lucky. After that, it's really just pointless. However, that's where it's used. And the screens themselves are put at an angle, as in most dual screen situations. Unfortunately, when you're in the center of this tent and you're looking at each of the screens, there is a noticeable hot spot, a very bright spot in the middle of the screen, and then it really darkens down by the time you reach the edge of the screen. That is because they're using the wrong screen material for that application. So I'm really glad you brought that up. It was something that was going through my head off and on as we were going through this, and I neglected to bring it up. So I'm glad that you mentioned something like that, because hotspots are something you definitely do not want to see. And it's definitely something you don't want your audience to see, because those of us, you never know when somebody like me is going to come visit your church, and if I see something like that, I'm going to approach you and I'm going to say something, because it's not because I want to point out that you're doing it wrong. I want to educate you and I want you to make the right decisions, and I want to empower you to have high quality tech, because my opinion, there's no excuse for poor quality tech. Charles, so first, before I get to you, Charles, Paul, does that answer your question? Yes, okay, excellent. Now, Charles, you indicated that you were kind of here as a learner instead of a contributor. I'm interested to hear what questions you have, because I think aside from maybe LaJuan, I think you probably have the most to gain from this discussion. Charles? Oh, we lost Charles. And he's back, maybe. Let's see. Charles, can you hear me? No, he's got to fix his audio stuff. So while we're waiting for Charles, and Charles, just chime in anytime. We can't hear you quite yet. Let's go to LaJuan while we're waiting for Charles. What questions, if any, observations, thoughts do you have?
Not very many questions. Well, not very many questions. A couple years ago, I went through looking to see what it would take to upgrade our system. But the thing that helped me out was deciding on what our budget was. So it's been, I guess we've been like 4 years. So it's been 2.5 years since I replaced the motor on the screen. So we've just been in a holding pattern. So I kind of looked at the different ones before, but my thing is now is, do we stay with the aspect ratio we have now, or do we upgrade to a different format? Because our system's been in here now. It's been in there for 20. No, I don't know. Maybe it's not 29 years, but it's been there for a while. And our projector's been in there for at least maybe 10. No, I don't know if it's 10 years. Maybe 10 years. So it's been there for a while. So with us upgrading, what would be the best to upgrade to so we have the longevity like we have now? Because all the equipment we have in our church now has been there 29 years. So what would be the best ratio to go so we'll be good in, say, 15 years, 10 years? Which is kind of a hard question because stuff changes so quick. Right now they have the new Ultra HD, the new different LCDs now for different TVs. They just announced this week in SEMA, so there's a lot of different ones that they don't have the filter like the old screen. So it's like, what it's going to be here in another 2 years, So
I think the important thing to realize is that you got to look both at where the industry is going, but you also got to look at where you're going as a church. UHD or 4K whatever you want to call it. They're not synonymous. They're very close in resolution, but they are different. Yes, it's coming. Yes, there are cameras that are now being made that you can get for relatively low cost that can produce that content. But where do you see yourself or yourselves as a church going? Do you see a need for Ultra HD quality, or is WUXGA, which is 1900 by 1200, I believe, or 1080p, is that good enough going forward? I seriously doubt that we're going to see the broadcast industry say, "Oh, UHD, yeah, let's go and spend $5 million renovating all of our equipment, all of our cameras, all of our transmitters, all of our switchers, all of our equipment," or more than that, $10 million. Let's do that again, because transitioning to HD was so much fun. I don't think you're going to see that for another 5-10 years minimum.
Well, on the Ultra High Ds, really the main thing is on the screens. Do we do like a HD, the wide narrow, or do we stay with the tall and rectangular kind of,
Right.
But I think our screen right now is a 10 by, no, so 160 by, I measured it, and I can't remember right now, but it's a daylight screen that is, oh man, I want to say 160 diagonal, but maybe I'm wrong. It's a big one, but I can't think right now. I have to go back in my pictures and look, because I took a picture of it, so I have a record of it.
Sure.
But I have 20,000 pictures in my Google Plus. I got to go back through for the last 4 years, or 3 years. So I had to go back and look and see. But it was a pretty big one at the time. But it's just the screen is the material. The problem we have is that our screen's on the left-hand side, and the people on the right-hand side of the church have a hard time seeing from the angle. So
Yep.
we're going to put up 2 screens, but I'm trying to decide, do we stay with the same format, or do we, like I said, go with a different format screen? Because so I don't know. It's up in the air. I don't know. I mean, it's a hard
Paul
decision.
has an opinion. Paul has an opinion. Go for it, buddy.
What you do is you go widescreen. That's the choice. And here's why. Because I don't see any formats coming out that are anything other than wide. There aren't any ultra, super duper high resolution, and we've gone back to the more square 4:3 aspect ratio. I haven't seen that on the horizon, and I'm happy to be wrong about that, but everything I see, the shape of it, the aspect ratio is the same. They're just putting more pixels into the same aspect ratio, more or less. I mean, for film, sometimes it's shorter, it's even wider, that kind of thing, but it's not the case that anything says, no, I like it the way that it used to be. So I'm not even totally sure if you were going to buy a brand new screen today, I'm not totally sure you could get a 4:3. Do you know, Tim? Because he needs 2 and he only has 1.
Yeah, you can. They still make them, and there are instances where I would say it's appropriate, but for me, if you can buy something now that will future-proof your church for the next 10 years, 15 years, like you're saying, I don't see why you wouldn't do that. It's important to understand, though, that on the back side of that, what the equipment that you're using to feed that image, from all the way from the signal source, which is going to be the computer, through the signal transmission, so what you're using to send the signal to the projector, any scalers, anything like that needs to be able to handle this new resolution, let's say, or format, 16:9, widescreen, whatever you want to call it. But for me, I look at it and I say, it's going to cost you about the same amount of money. to go widescreen. You know, the only issue is that if you go widescreen and you're coming out of a system like with a projector that does 4:3, then you're going to have to get a new projector, you know, to handle that image natively. So there is a cost associated with that that is higher than just buying another screen. But you can get really nice quality projectors for around, I mean, depending on what you want. You know, resolution and lumens is really what drives the cost of the projector. So, I mean, there's other features like lens shift and vertical keystoning, that kind of thing. Connectivity, if you want HD SDI for some reason, that will drive the cost up. Interchangeable lenses is another thing that will drive the cost up. But the primary factors are resolution and brightness. So if you can get a 4,000 lumen projector for around $1,100, and you can get a manual projection screen, I mean, the ones for Crossway that we did were manual. They're going to be down all the time, but they wanted the capability of moving them up. I'm like, great, no problem. They were like $200. You know, they're not as large as a 160-inch diagonal. Those are going to be, you know, a bit more, but there are ways that you can get around budget issues if that is an issue for you. But I would definitely say that if you can get a screen that is going to future-proof you now, and screens last a long time, they really do. You know, and if you need to clean them, mild detergent or mild soap and a little water, a wet rag, you're good to go. If you take care of it, it'll take care of you. Does that help you at all?
Yeah, it's just like I said, yeah, it does. I mean, so to hear you right, to future-proof, our best option would be to go with 16:9 or 4:3.
I'd say 16:9.
Okay, that's what I thought too. But we're going to upgrade all our both our projectors and take the screen down and move it to our multi-purpose room. So it's an electric screen. It has to be electric because I sent you a picture. I don't know if you saw it.
I haven't seen it yet, but
I think I'm screen sharing it, Tim. If you want to
Oh,
see if
are
you
you?
can see my PC.
That was
Yeah.
my nephew's, one of my nephew's, my little cousin, wedding.
Oh,
You can see
okay.
the screen on the left side there, but it's over
Yeah.
a door, so you have to move it to get out of the choir door.
Right.
That's our screen we have now. So you see all the lights inside. We're going to put another one on the right-hand side where the guys are standing.
Sure.
And in the same area. So, but the problem is when you're on this side of the church, you can't really see the screen as clear.
Nope.
At the angle. You know, but
Well, and it looks like your stage lighting is like washing out the right half of that screen.
I don't even know. I can't even remember at the wedding if the screen was on or not. It may not have been on, but I can't. Well, let me.
Well, I'm just saying in general,
Yeah.
there is stage lighting on that screen.
Yeah.
Other than the
The little
ambient.
white ones at top. Yeah. That's our
So
projector out from there. So
sure.
it's a 2500 luminous projector. So it's an older one.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know. We'll see. We're supposed to talk some more about it this month to find out. The guy's supposed to be there this month, so I'm like, let's see what happens. You know.
So for everybody watching, and for those of us that are in here in the HOA, this is a prime example of. Why don't we just break this down? Let's just break this down. We got high ambient light. We've got a relatively short projection throw, and that's the distance between the projector and the screen. We've got a 4:3 screen that we're now going to be going to a widescreen, which means that you're going to lose vertical space. Does that make sense? Because in order to fit the same width screen in that space, it looks like you can go a little bit wider on that left side, potentially, but not much.
No, you can't really, cause well, they're gonna have to redo the woodwork because it goes up into the behind what would you call that? It goes up into the ceiling. Well, almost up to into the ceiling,
Well,
or
yeah,
into
it's got a
soffit
wood
there.
facade on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So yeah, in order to get the same width of image, you're going to have to lose the height of the image, which is
Yeah.
fine. There's really nothing wrong with that. You just have to, explain that to them so they're not like, hey, it's a smaller image. Inform, educate, educate, educate as much as you can.
Well, hopefully with two screens, even though we lose some on that screen, at least the people on the right-hand side will be able to see better with the
Yeah.
two screens. So it won't have to be as big
Yeah,
with multiple
absolutely.
screens. You split them both, it's a little bit easier,
Yeah, so
So-
I would say, for me, if it were me speccing, I'd probably go with the appropriate size, the HD Progressive 1.3 material, and obviously you're gonna have to measure that space and make sure that it's gonna fit. You'll get the motorized version of that, and then I would go with a minimum 4,000 lumen projector. If you can
Yeah.
find something higher than that for a good price, I usually go with one of two brands. I'll go with InFocus. I like InFocus because I've had good experience. They're a local company to me. They're based in the Northwest. Or the other one, oh dear, really?
Brain freeze.
Yeah, brain fart really is what it is. They're based in California, and I will have it here very, very soon. Mountain View, there we go. And bill of materials. We are looking at, no, really? I'm so embarrassed that I can't remember the name of this thing. That is just really irritating. My brain is just like turned off completely. No, they're not Panasonics. I know that. It's not Optima. It was actually a brand that I thought it was like an off brand, honestly. I was very surprised when I learned that they were like the manufacturer for big name brands. So, and all I'm finding is Panasonic, and I know that it's not Panasonic.
Sanyo? Not Sanyo, is it? No.
No, it's not Sanyo either. The problem is I've got like 19 different documents here for these guys, and none of it is what I'm looking for.
There's so many of them.
I know, it's crazy. No, not in focus.
Trying to find a better picture of the screen. Going through my pictures.
All right, we'll go to the email. So, any other questions while I look that up?
Well, I could probably put my 2 cents worth in there while you're looking.
Yeah, go for it. Please, fill the airwaves.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, just hearing all the discussion, I mean, if you're considering an upgrade coming up and you've got a 4x3 screen, I would say going, widescreen 16:9 is definitely a must. I mean, every bit of content imaginable is going widescreen. The only challenge you might have, of course, is pastors or other presenters that are putting PowerPoint or something up there. They don't always have a widescreen presentation template, but for the most part, everything's going widescreen. But the one thing to kind of keep in mind, and this kind of goes back to good stewardship, is when you're considering doing a projector upgrade, and let's say you're a situation like our church where you're a part of a multi-campus situation, and you're depending on other churches' broadcast to watch. So and you're in a rural setting, so you got poor internet. You know you're going to have poor internet for probably the next 5 to 10 years. So it basically means you're going to be watching broadcasts from the other churches that is like maybe 480p if you're lucky, 360p on the average. Is it worth it to go full HD or a 4K projector for your church and spend all that money?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's not really worth it if you've got that sort of situation. But if you're in a more metropolitan area or a city or that, where internet's better and you're part of a multi-campus district, you might consider it. So you kind of have to keep those things in perspective.
well, we don't have to worry about the multi-campus, but the problem we have is right now we have AT&T, and I get 17, I think to 20 in the office, but we're trying to. There's no way to run wires, so I have 2 repeaters to get to the church. So it drops the signal. By the time we get to the pulpit, you're getting 3, maybe, on a good day. And in the sound booths, we're getting, some days we got 7. So I've been trying to figure out the best way to run the wires, but with our church built, there's no way to run the wires except either outside to get to the pulpit or along the wall on the inside. I kind of want it to be pretty, not pretty, but where you don't see it. But that's the whole other stuff we have to discuss. Because I'm telling them, okay, we're going to do the upgraded system, but what about the infrastructure, internet, run the power? Are we going to? I have some of the ubiquitous antennas. Well, I have one right now to hook up for the system to maybe boost the signal, but the thing is, are we going to run all the wires now for that so that they're in there? So later on, we may not put all the antennas in, but at least we have all the infrastructure there to add to it later on. Because I have 3 routers. No, I have 3. No, I have 3 different extenders. Because I have to signal for the treasury. They're on their own one, and then sound booth, and then the church to the pulpit. So it makes it kind of difficult.
Yeah, but in your case, as far as the your internet speeds, I mean, you're speaking the download speeds, and the download speeds actually sound really good. So I guess, since you're not in a multi-campus situation, depending on another church's broadcast, the question, I guess, for you is, are you going to be watching Blu-ray videos of something, or are you just going to be watching DVDs? And that kind of goes back to the same question. If you're just going to be watching DVDs and not Blu-ray, do you really need to consider 1080p or, like I say, 4K? I say 4K because it's the latest cutting edge on the market. I don't know. Paul may debate me on this. I'll let Paul say his 2 cents. But it's all about what media are you going to be projecting, and where do you think you're going to be in 5 to 10 years? For most churches, I just don't see a big thing for 1080p or 4K or something like that unless you're going to be doing, like I say, Blu-ray or something.
Well, I don't even know. I know we have a Mac in there. I don't even know if it has a Blu-ray player in it. But sometimes what we do is pull in the satellite feed from the conference office or whatever the satellite system is. We'll pull in the feed from that sometime and broadcast that sometimes during occasions. Every once in a while, they may do a video or something, but I don't know. You never know. I hope it will be set up so that we're pretty much, if we need to do Blu-ray, we can do it. But I don't know. I don't know how far they're how far they want to go. They want to broadcast. We want to be a stream and broadcast later on. That's what they want to do, but I don't know. That's what they want to do, but I don't know if we have the signal to do it unless we get those wires so we can get a direct connection with our sound booth. And
yeah,
I think that we used to have 2 different connections, but now AT&T won't let you have 2 different ones. So,
right.
I'd rather run wires, but there's no way.
I'll step in here and remind you guys that yes, there are high-resolution screen materials, but I'm not sure that they're going to be within the budget, especially a 4K screen material. I don't think they're necessarily going to be in the budget for most churches, especially to the point that I'll just come out and say it. If you want to go 4K at this time in history, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's bad stewardship. I think that's probably I think that's just smacking of pride, honestly. Well, we have the latest and greatest. Well, who cares? You know, great, happy for you. What are you doing to help the homeless? What are you doing to help the needy that are around you? You know, okay, great. You've got a 20,000 lumen projector in a space that's made for 500 people. That's a hard sell for me. You know, I get that churches want to be media centric and all this, but that's no excuse for going overboard. You know, is a church of 500 people ever going to need a 20,000 lumen projector? Probably not. That's pretty much where I come down. In fact, you know, honestly, for the cost of a 20,000 lumen projector, you can probably get 4,000 or 5,000 lumen projectors. You know, so it's about what you need now, what you need in the future, not necessarily what you want, and that's an important difference. And I would say that for the projection conversation, yeah, I know I brought 4K into it, but I really don't see it as a relevant discussion point, honestly. I think 1080p is good. I think it's great for just about any church to ascribe to. I think it certainly is high resolution as you need to go. Anything over and above that, you're going to run into issues of content availability. Yes, certainly there will be more content being produced in 4K, but what's the difference between that and 1080p? You know, you go to YouTube and you can watch 4K content if your connection supports it, but you're probably looking at it on, like me, I'm looking at it on a 37-inch 1080p TV. So am I really seeing the quality difference? Well, no, because the extra quality that 4K has in it is lost because of what I'm watching it on. You know, and I'm not about to go spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on a 4K display just so I can say I have one. Whoop-de-doo. There are more important uses for my money. I'm sorry. So sometimes that's a hard conversation to have. You know, in our own personal lives, you know, I am a gearhead through and through. I've got a wish list that's, you know, 2 pages long. If I get extra money, I know where it's going. You know, but there comes a time when we have to face reality and we have to say, okay, I've got a little extra money, but you know what? I got these bills coming due. I got a car payment. Maybe I can make an extra car payment there. You know, we have to sacrifice our wants for our needs. And I think I don't see why that principle doesn't also extend to the church. And we're getting a little off topic here, but you know, do you need the brightest projected image in your district or in your city? No, you don't. You need what you need. You need a clear image that's bright enough for everybody to see, and you need a system that's reliable, that's easy to use, and that allows people to see what needs to be seen. Anything over and above that, in my mind, is gravy. You know, if you can spend the same amount of money and get more features, can get more benefit, can get more functionality out of your projection system, great. But you got to understand, you got to train yourself or ask the questions to say, how much do we need and how much can we get for that same price, and what can we do without? Those are my thoughts. Yeah, I got on my soapbox. Sorry.
Well, I do think you're making one good point for sure, and that is I think it's just way too early to commit to UHD right now. That
It may not be here
it's
in
not the
5 years.
case that the standards aren't fully landed. It's too early to commit to that on that end, but I would hate to buy a new system that's 800 by 600 unless I'm in a really low income church and it's that or nothing. But I actually was in a discussion this morning on Facebook with someone who'd found like a $400 LED projector that was, I'm not leaving out a zero, 160 lumens. And they were saying, is this good enough? No. It's probably not good enough for a very small conference room. It might not be good enough for your kid's bedroom if they wanted to watch movies on the wall. It's just really, really, really dim. And someone else found one on B&H for $300 that was 800 by 600 at 2700 lumens. So that's, the numbers are much better for a very bargain basement price, but with 800 by 600, that seems really low resolution, especially if what you're doing is you're doing lyric projection, because you've got words, and if you've tried to put a computer signal on a standard definition television, you know if you lose resolution, you also lose legibility. So I think I wouldn't recommend 4K today. Maybe in 2 or 3 years, maybe I would, but we'll see how it shakes out. But I wouldn't recommend 800 by 600 or even 1024 by 768 either. I'd say the sweet spot right now is 720p or 1080p, and 1080p is probably better. So
I agree.
think we agree on that stuff.
I agree. I mean, for the money, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to go with a VGA, signal. I completely agree.
Yeah,
There may be some arguments made for it, but I think by and large, for the money, HD is the way to go at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree as well as far as what Paul was saying. I mean, for a small church like our size, less than 100, maybe start shopping for something that puts out 720p. But if you find something that puts out 1080p for a steal, jump on it. But otherwise, keep your head about you, when you're shopping. Like we say, keep good stewardship and don't go overboard on something when, like I say, you don't have the content that's going to meet that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I finally found the other manufacturer. It's Vivitech is the other manufacturer. So InFocus and Vivitech are kind of the de facto two that I go to. I do look at other ones for every projection system that I spec out, but those are kind of the ones that I gravitate towards because as far as feature set for the money, for the price, the value seems to be much better than, say, a Sanyo. And given my experience with Sanyo, it's not always been positive. That's not to put a black eye on them or anything. Many churches, I mean, they probably are still the dominant projector manufacturer in the industry right now. And rightly so. They do make a good product. I just think that there are better options or other options that are just as good. Let's put it that way. That way I'm not offending anybody at Sanyo. The ones that I would really caution you to stay away from would be the ones that you probably have not heard of. As far as installation projectors, I would stay away from Optima and BenQ. Not heard good things about those guys. As far as portable, like boardroom projectors, that kind of thing, I don't see a problem with that, because once you get to that class of projector, they're all pretty much synonymous in my book. Other good installation options are Panasonic. Panasonic makes fantastic installation projectors, and I mean, we're talking 5,000 lumen and above. You know, that's the class that we're talking. What's another one? That's usually, I don't have any experience with Sony projectors, so you know, I would go look at reviews, see what other people are saying, see what their experience has been. But yeah, getting back to projection screens. Let's talk manufacturers of projection screens. The big two are Draper and Daylight. Stewart is another one, not quite as well known. Stewart Film Screen is I believe, the full name, and as their name dictates, I believe that they kind of own the market for theaters, but they're certainly somebody to look at. My default, in case anybody's wondering, is Daylight, just because I'm more familiar with them than any other. But another couple that you may want to look at, they're a little on the higher end, so you can imagine high-end home theater. DNP, which is a Danish company, I believe, and then Elite Screens is an American company, and you got to be careful with them, because you know, they are high-gain screens, so bear that in mind. But the Elite Screens in particular have some pretty amazing products that will really blow your mind. You know, so I encourage you to YouTube them. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about, you know, any particular manufacturer. You know, like I said, I was showing Daylight stuff just because I'm more familiar with them. That doesn't mean they're the best. It doesn't mean they're the worst. It's just what I'm familiar with. So, and I'm the host. It's my show, so take that. Anyway, any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap this up?
Oh, it's just good info.
I think we covered it well.
Paul?
I said I think we covered it well. Despite our intentions, we did go into projectors, though. So
yes, but we didn't go into projection technology. So that's going to be another hangout.
Well, I mean, resolution. That's true.
Well, I mean, we kind of had to talk about resolution. I mean, the last thing I want is somebody to be like, well, he never brought that up. And it's important. I've spent $10,000 on this. Yeah. It is an important discussion. So yes, we will at some point in the future talk about the difference between DLP, LCOS, LCD, laser, which is brand new. I'm going to have to do a lot of research on that, because it is brand new. It's a solid state projection technology, which is really cool. So you can imagine, like, you're getting 20,000 hours out of your light source, or your lamp would be the equivalent terminology, before you have to replace it. So that's pretty darn cool. But yeah, we'll do that down the road. But yeah, thanks for being a part of this, as always, gentlemen. And look forward to next week. I won't tell you what the topic is next week. I will announce it in the communities. So that'll be good incentive for y'all watching and y'all participating to be active in the communities. So either live in fear or live in anticipation, your choice. So with that, gentlemen, I will say goodbye. And for all of you out there in internet land, thank you for watching once again. And if you want to contact any of us, you are more than welcome to get on Google Plus and look up the Church Tech group, or the Adventist Church Tech group, the Tech Applied group, or the Church Mag group. I'm a member of all four, and the rest of us are members of one of those, if not more than one. So with that, we will see you next time.